Welcome to this important webinar. Thank you for joining us today. StressMaster has linked up with Biologic Balance to provide you with a great webinar on the role of cortisol and stress. Hi, I'm Jim Peterson, along with Kyla Lee Lander, and today Kyla will be sharing with you how Biologic Balance is providing professionals like you with the information needed to help your clients learn how to master stress by first understanding how cortisol impacts our behaviors, our body, and our mind. So let's get started. Here is Kyla Lee Lander to provide the information we promised.
When we first heard about StressMaster International, we thought, ooh, this is going to be amazing. So we didn't know where it would go, but I know I'm very grateful to have come into this, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And I'll touch on that throughout. So today I'll try and breeze through this but cover all of the high points. I will go through introductions and some of what Jim mentioned, so cortisol and stress, learning what we can learn from cortisol, our personal cortisol testing services at Biologic Balance, some additional services that we have, and if it's applicable to you or you think it would be useful, how we can integrate and collaborate. And then lastly, some closing remarks and opening it up for any and all questions that you may have. Okay. So the brain is an incredible almost machine. It has 100 billion neurons, trillions upon trillions of connections. So understanding what we're doing, we can't really get that, especially when it comes to stress. There's so much happening. The World Health Organization has dubbed stress as the health epidemic of the 21st century. The American Psychological Association has linked stress to all the 6 leading causes of death. Mental Health America estimates that 1 in 5 teenagers are clinically depressed right now. And what's sort of hard about this is going back to the brain is there's so much happening, and a lot of this is actually subconscious, and these patterns start to develop and we aren't aware of them. So they sometimes call it a closed neural feedback loop. Okay, so why are we here? I am Kayla Lee Lander, and I am in this because I found stress release and helping people through meditation, teaching these stress reduction techniques. I work at the VA Center. I work with individuals with PTSD, traumatic brain injuries. I teach at Clemson University, personal training, so for the physical body, nutrition. Any way your body can be out of balance, I can at least try to help or have some background in that. And my co-founder, or founder, Dr. Rebecca Heiss, she is a stress physiologist. And one thing that we both had in common was that we both worked with youth in an educational environment, and we saw that these young individuals were under such stress and such pressure. So going back to that last statistic that 1 in 6 are clinically depressed, what does that mean for adulthood? And so that's where we came into the idea of biologic balance and helping people come back to balance. And that's where I want to introduce stress as cortisol. Okay, so you've probably heard of stress, but you might have not heard of this glucocorticoid hormone, cortisol. It is naturally produced by our body, and it does some good things, and it's also released in response to stress or our fight or flight response. So you might think of if you almost get hit by a car, or if you get an email from a boss, something like that. And for our company, Biologic Balance, we are talking specifically about salivary cortisol, so what would be in your spit, because in the industry, medical and professional, this saliva cortisol is frequently used as a biomarker of stress. Okay? And it's representative of the biologically active fraction that can interact and cause a response in the body. So I want to step back and look at our ancestors' stress. So when their stress response happened, they were doing a few things. They were fighting, they were fleeing, or potentially they froze. Okay, so that was sort of the basis. That's what they needed. They would have a stimuli like a woolly mammoth. The woolly mammoth would leave, and then their adrenal system, their body would recover. Okay, so I don't know about Arizona or Kat where you are, but we do not have woolly mammoths in South Carolina. But we do have our own modern stressors that you might be able to relate to. So, disrupted sleep, overstimulation, travel, mortgage, maybe Kat planning all your workshops in your schedule, skipping meals, unhealthy foods, news, traffic jams, too much to do, too little time. It gets overwhelming. It's just so much stimuli that our body doesn't have the actual time to recover. So I actually have a background in environmental toxicology, and a big concept I want to just introduce is exposures and responses. So you can see the arrow that says stressor. I would think of a stressor as an exposure, and then that increase in the line, the increase in cortisol concentrations, is the response. Okay? In a normal situation, there would be a stressor, cortisol increases, and then we recover. There may be a few little bumps throughout the day, but for the most part, we stay steady. Thinking back to that previous slide of traffic, boss, no sleep, too much to do, work stress, family stress, etc., what happens is we don't have time to recover. Okay, so this might be what someone would have chronic stress. They would always be up a little bit higher. You can think of that I gotta brain, or the constant worry. Okay? And when we are up this high all the time, there are a few things that happen. You know, you may be nervous, maybe depression or anxiety creeps in, unexplained headaches, negative mood, loneliness, agitation, being overwhelmed, frustration, and the list goes on. And the thing is to know that these symptoms, or how this manifests, it is a normal reaction. It's what our body does almost as a protection mechanism. So this is why it's so valuable to quantify stress. Yes, there are incredible benefits of acute stress, a little stressor and it bumps us up, maybe to get ready for a talk, for metabolic function, for exercise, physical performance, maybe athletes. However, there are more adverse effects of chronic stress than benefits of acute stress. Okay, so this might be increased appetite, cravings for fats and sugars, weight gain, depressed immune system, decreased serotonin and dopamine, that's the happy chemicals or hormones, intensified aging process, decreased brain cells and ability to learn, and lower testosterone and sex drive. And so this is something that a lot of people in, I know, my own community and in our country and throughout the world are experiencing right now. And that's why I think there's even more of a need to help come back to balance. So right now, a lot of people think of relief and they may think, oh, I'm going to go on vacation, whether it's Maui or, you know, maybe just staying in for the night or something to just relax. But the reality is that our stressors are continuous throughout the day. We live in such a modern world, but we still have this ancestral brain that's getting ready to prep to fight or flight. Okay, we have more stimuli in one day than our ancestors ever did. So that's why knowing your cortisol levels and starting to assess your stress and integrate awareness is really empowering. It provides you with the knowledge so that you can make decisions, or in the case of your client. So the theme of biologic balance is finding balance. So you can see on the x-axis that we have stress levels, and on our y-axis we have performance. So there's a sweet spot where we have our average or normal stress level, cortisol levels, and optimal performance. Okay, that's where we'd all like to be, but with our crazy world and all the things we have to do, it's not always the case. So I'm going to show you a few scenarios that we see in measuring cortisol at biologic balance and why those are important. The first little introduction to this is understanding your stress profile. And so I'm sure you know we follow a circadian rhythm. In the morning we start to wake up. Throughout the day we start to slow down. At night we rest, hopefully a very sound sleep. And if our cortisol level follows this natural curve, you can see those dots pretty close to the green dashed line, then we're probably going to be okay. But there's some other situations where this isn't the case. So sometimes our cortisol levels can be below the normal range. The first example of this is actually chronic fatigue. So if you're a trainer or if you are in the wellness industry and you have a client come in and say, I am just exhausted in the afternoon, maybe this could be a piece of that. Okay. Similar piece or similar stress pattern or stress profile is burnout. Okay, so burnout is when we actually don't have that initial increase in cortisol in the morning, which is called, they call it CAR or cortisol awakening response. So in between waking and the first, say, hour, our cortisol can increase by 60 to 80%, and that gets us going in the morning. If you're burnt out, you don't get going. That's complete grogginess, exhaustion, mental, physical, everything. The other side of this is when stress levels are higher than the average. And this is what we probably think of with a lot of people in our very busy world. And that looks like chronic stress. And I'd like to point out that by chronic, what I really mean here is someone that has multiple intermittent continuing stressors or stimuli. So whether that's you wake up in the morning and you have traffic, there's the mortgage payment, there's the meeting, the this, the picking up the kids, and the list goes on. It's the people that aren't getting a break and or that don't have the coping skills to help recover. And so looking at our stress profile, this can really tell us a lot or help guide our clients with where to start. So if they're chronically stressed, that could help include, hey, what are our recovery programs? Maybe diet, exercise, mindfulness, the new level-headed app. For someone with burnout, you don't want someone with burnout going to do a high-intensity exercise. That may actually put them further down. So that's a certain awareness. Chronic fatigue, that would be a whole other set of criteria that you would use to develop a plan for them. And maybe you're normal, or maybe your clients are normal, and that is still valuable information. It's at least a starting point so we know where we're going and where we've been. So I'd like to think of this sort of as a cycle, and with our cortisol testing kit, the first step is awareness. A lot of people have struggled, and by finding this knowledge or knowing, being able to identify what is wrong, it's a little bit of relief there, because then they know what action to take, and then the adaptation takes place, and then it's almost normal. Okay, and this is cyclical because it's going to keep happening. Our life is going to change, the stimuli are going to change, and we can start to be comfortable with this process of adaptation and taking new action. For now, we'll look specifically at increasing awareness with our cortisol testing kits. So we offer 3 kits. We have baseline, a diurnal kit, and before and after. So starting with the baseline. So our baseline cortisol kits, we recommend taking your sample of between, say, 6 to 8 in the morning, or as close as you can upon waking up. Okay, this could be beneficial if someone just wants a general idea of where they are. So maybe take a sample and then try a new workout program or a new meditation program, and then 30 days later, they retest to see what shifted. Okay, a simple measurement. Going back to what I think is the most useful and the most informative is the diurnal curve. So you can recall that a normal curve would have an increase around morning time, dropping down about 50% around lunchtime, then slowly dropping down around bedtime, hopefully. What happens though, this is actually real data from one of our clients. You can see around, I think that's maybe 6:30, 7 a.m., that their cortisol is off the chart. And then their lower three are below the average. And so this is an indication of adrenal fatigue. So they could just take steps on their own, or they could take this to their medical care provider and dive in even deeper. It's at least giving the knowledge to do that. And lastly, we have before and after testing kits. So these are great for someone who may be taking a proactive approach to managing their stress. This could be, say, the example with this graph here is actually one of our clients who goes to the float center called Drift. I don't know if you've heard of it, floating or immersion therapy. It's like sensory deprivation. We're doing a trial with clients with PTSD to see if this floating can help reduce their stress. And you see here that their data points fall way out of the average, but there's still a decrease and there is still some relief. So this could indicate that it's an approach that's worth using and worth returning to. Okay. So how do we do this? The first step is obtaining a kit, and later on in the presentation I'll talk about a few different ways to do that. For our testing, we are just using a saliva sample, so it's as simple as spitting in a tube. We do this because, first of all, it's more affordable. And another really big part of this is you don't have to go to the doctor. You don't have to get poked with needles. Most likely that elicits the stress response that we are trying to evade. Okay? So you spit in the tube and we provide a return envelope and return postage. So all you do is pop it in your mailbox and then you will receive results from us. Okay, so if you're just doing a base program, you would receive a result of a graph with your data on it. So this was the example of that person with adrenal fatigue. And to the right of the graph, we show maybe one or two very subtle remarks and then some further recommendations below. And if someone is interested, that's where we bring in the further stress assessment, or the SMQ, and consultation to help make lifestyle changes. And so we're still sort of in the awareness phase, but it's another option is to go into the action phase and then adaptations. So here is our Instinctive Cognition program. It is not cortisol testing, but it can be partnered with it. Rebecca and I both have experience with managing stress. I am also a teacher of meditation and stress reduction at Clemson, and we used our combined knowledge to create the Instinctive Cognition program. Okay? So what this is scientific lab-based methods to lower stress. So we're using some of the modern neuroscience of what's happening in the brain, the connections in the brain, to shift people's awareness, shift their habits, and resulting in that long-term adaptation. Okay? So this included with Instinctive Cognition is access to the full 21-day online program. Jim, this is one of the things I was talking to you about earlier. You also get a before and after stress testing kit. This is to assess your baseline cortisol levels to see, hey, where am I in the beginning and how did this help me? Then lastly, there is an analog journal to keep you on track to your goal. So just like Kat with your accountability group, this journal is that little bit of accountability. It goes into bringing awareness to our sleep habits, our water, our exercise, our screen time. We even have a day that focuses on gratitude. So a lot of the concepts or aspects that I think we all share in our personal or professional practices, we address here. So integration and collaboration. Our main service here is cortisol testing. We also offer stress assessment and consultation. and then our program, Instinctive Cognition. So this is actually what our website looks like. The services tab just gives you a description of everything. You can go to order, testimonials, or if someone needs to contact us or you do and you don't have our information, you can go here. I'd like to point out that we are actually adapting our stress assessment and consultation approach to using the SMQ. I think it's incredibly valuable, and I'm very excited to see how it helps people. With that, I want to go into our options. So in the very first column, that's just a review of our services, cortisol testing and consulting services. The second column is what happens if you purchase directly. So these are the same prices that you would see on our website. So if just a bystander went on the website and purchased, this is what they would get. We have an influencer program. So this is if you find that you know someone that is out of balance, or that you recognize maybe some of this fatigue, or you think they could benefit from a mindfulness program or bringing awareness, then maybe you can become an influencer. We could do one-on-one talks. We could help you integrate this into your business and give you the resources so that you feel comfortable talking about it. The prices for that are all below, and that's with a $100 sign-up fee just to cover probably an hour or two of consultations over the first few weeks getting started. The last column is what's special for our Stress Master Associates. We want you guys to use this. We want you to have this as a tool to help your clients, to help yourself, your family, or anyone that may need it. So there's a few differences here. The $100 sign-up fee is waived, and the cortisol testing kits are the same, but the consulting services are different. So since most of you are Stress Master Associates, we assume that you already have the SMQ, so taking part of that off the price. So you could still just get a consultation. Instinctive Cognition, that is decreased, as well as the stress assessment, consultation, and diurnal testing kit. So that's sort of the Mac Daddy of we'll go through the SMQ, do an in-depth consultation, and figure out the full stress profile. And if you have any questions about these, please let us know and we'll update you. And there also, you see that last row, it says new and upcoming services. So this is what I'm really excited about. First of all, Stress Master. I want to thank you again, Jim. So excited to implement this into our program. I'm excited to dive into the stress mastery programs and start offering that in the Greenville community, and just happy to be able to partner with you. With that, I think that the combination of Stress Master International and Biologic Balance has a lot of power behind it. In between the cortisol testing, the consultations, stress mastery, instinctive cognition, and all these new things coming down the pipe, I just feel like we have a lot of options to help people. And the best part is that we can customize what we're doing since everyone's situation is so different. And in case anyone missed the webinar a few weeks ago, the last part I'm very excited about is AGS. So if you did not see this webinar, go look at it, become one of their providers. As someone in the wellness and nutrition and stress world, I was so excited specifically about their health and wellness genetic testing. So this can help people understand their dietary profile, what would be the optimal exercise for them, their stress predisposition, and so much more, including medicines. And yes, if you'd like to do that, go to their website. I'm not going to dive into that topic, but this seems like a really great tool, and the three of them together, and hopefully with your business, all the affiliates, what you're doing. And that's where I want to come into, what is your why? Why are you showing up each day to help people? Why are you doing this business? I wanted to share with you just some of our testimonials, because this is our why, giving people relief. So this is one of them. Understanding where my stress was coming from helped me formulate a plan to manage it more effectively. So this is simple, but this touches on that cycle of awareness, action, and adaptation, which I think is really important. Another, thanks to biologic balance, I feel more in control again of my stress. Understanding my personal cortisol curve was essential to tackling my weight loss goals. So if we know any of those ladies that are trying to get in shape for their trip to Maui or this or that, maybe understanding their cortisol could help. And then a last one is I've dedicated an entire room in my house to the principle I learned through instinctive cognition and biologic balance. It's changed my life. So what we hope is that this isn't just an intervention or a way to fix something that's already broken. We hope that this is a way that you can start to bring awareness to what's happening in your mind and in your body and have an approach, have security that you know what to do. So with that, trying to keep it short, I hope that we can help you or your clients be your best biologic self and that you have a stress-free day. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Kyla. Great presentation, wonderful information. And I don't know if there are any questions. I have one. I just would like you to expand a little bit more on the natural cycle of cortisol. We know it rises in the morning. Can you touch a little bit more on why that is, and does it always stay balanced throughout the day? And I understand that if you're under stress, it's not going to be there. But what is the mechanism behind the cortisol and why the cycle is what it is? Do we know anything about that?
Okay, so I was actually glad you asked that. I was thinking that we could do a whole other webinar on cortisol. So from my understanding, I am not a neuroscientist, but there is this whole field of neurobiology, neuroscience, neuroendocrine biology, and this is a relationship between our brain and our nervous system, our endocrine system, so our, say, pituitary, hypothalamus, our adrenals, etc., and also our body. So to my understanding, this is a natural rhythm that when our body is biologically in sync, it happens effortlessly. A big component that I have found in my research, if you want to dive further into this, is the HPA, or your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Okay, have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
So yeah, that's where I found a big piece, especially with some of the ladies with hormonal imbalances and with chronic stress, with childhood stress, with PTSD. What happens is the activity or the mechanism, how the HPA works is shifted. So the cascade of hormones becomes shifted. The resiliency to stress becomes shifted. And that's what can affect the actual diurnal curve in my research.
Let me ask you a question. If somebody, we know that sleep is a big problem for many people, and stress and stressful thoughts that people have at night can tend to keep them awake. And I'm assuming that would affect cortisol levels because the stressor is mentally ongoing. Can you address that kind of issue?
Yeah, I'd love to. So you could think of that in a few different ways of the idea of worrying. So if you think of worry, that might just be a thought. But if it persists long enough, it can sometimes turn into actual anxiety. And that's more shifting the physiological, what's happening in the body. If I work with someone that really struggles with worrying at night, I may work with them on, hey, can you take a journal and can you actually write down your thoughts before bed? Okay, so if you can get it out of your head and sort of stop that psychological trigger. And then the next thing I would integrate would be a breath practice. Because if someone has already triggered their fight or flight response, even just with a thought, that means the sympathetic nervous system is up or engaged. So if we can use the breath and self-regulation of the nervous system with the breath, we can start to get the sympathetic nervous system back down, then the parasympathetic nervous system and the rest and digest back up so that they can calm down and get in that restful state.
Great, good point. Kat, do you or anyone else have any questions? I have multiple questions myself, but I don't want to dominate.
No, that was a great question, Jim, and I love this chart about the diurnal cortisol, and this, speaks into a little more of the medical or biological side of this, but all of what Kyla has, indicated as coaching techniques to work with people, I already employ all of this into my coaching practice. So this is exciting for me to have another tool to be able to offer to people to give them the hard facts on what's actually going on inside their body. And I want to do a test myself on this. I'd like to experience, the testing process and see those results. And I did have one question for Kyla, and it was around when you were talking about the chart that showed there was, and I think, I'm not going to phrase this exactly how you said it, but it was around the one that came back as an indicator of adrenal fatigue. Mm-hmm. So my question was, when somebody does the test, mm-hmm. and the test is indicating adrenal fatigue, is that indicated in the results that they get back with the suggestion that they see a physician?
So we have a disclaimer that this is not a medical diagnosis.
Perfect.
This is, yes, cover that. This is meant for wellness. And with my background, I would love to offer people lifestyle changes and tools first. And if it doesn't self-mediate, then
right.
Go to the professional.
Right. That's what I was looking for. So I was wondering if, when you said it's, this is an indicator of adrenal fatigue, I was wondering if those results were in writing suggesting that to somebody. That's what
yes.
Okay.
I would say so, and this is based in science. That statement would be included.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, because I love that, because I've had clients where they've got every indicator to me that they've got adrenal fatigue going on. And so that's what I do, is I work with them on trying to, reverse that and bring that level back into a more normal area. I have a friend who I've worked with on this for a couple of years, and I mean, she actually had medical results that showed that. So we've been working on that.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see that, especially it sounds like with what you do, by changing lifestyle,
yes.
habits, diet, mental habits, patterns, the body,
yes.
It wants to be in balance. You just have
yes.
to help it, nudge it there.
Yes, and sleep. And Jim, I love how I have to get back. I have not watched that genetic testing video. I just wrote that down again. I'm going to try and get that in by the end of this weekend.
Great.
So that I can watch that, because I love how all this marries everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of my goals has been to expand the assessment side of stress, because yes, the stress mastery questionnaire does look at behaviors and stressors and stress effects to some degree, and is a good starting point for coaching and training. But yet having more ammunition to work with clients, or even in a training program, would enable to really understand the dynamics of stress, and really get the fact that stress can be both positive, as we've pointed out, but
yes.
also can be very damaging. And a lot of people don't really get it.
They don't get it, and they don't know how to build in what I call self-care time. I'm constantly teaching people about, you have to build in self-care time, and that can, that can be employed in a number of methodologies. And a lot of people think they're just being selfish by doing that. Mm-hmm. And I use the oxygen mask example all the time. If you don't put that oxygen mask on yourself first, you are not going to be available to help anybody, your kids or whatever.
How do you see this working in a corporate setting? We're talking a lot about coaching here.
Oh, holy cow.
Can you see this working in a training program,
Totally.
stress mastery program?
Totally. I made a huge note to myself. I mean, this is literally what I wrote down. I want to do more of a huge shift into the stress area and bring that, because everything else that I do supports that. And there's just too much stress going on in our world. I mean, you talk about not having a big woolly mammoth in our life. People have woolly mammoths in their life. They just look different.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, it's a woolly mammoth, but it's 100 of them, and they take different shapes.
Yes. And we have a huge woolly mammoth going on in politics right now, and it's just like I've talked to so many people, and myself included. I took a month off from the news because I found myself so upset every time I saw something, and it was affecting me, and I just had to stop. So I took a break from it. But what I wrote down, Jim, to answer your question was, and I wrote this in here, is shift more into a niche field of how stress is affecting our lives, and to integrate all of these three components, the stress, the AGS, and this, into my executive and one-on-one coaching. My one-on-one coaching can be, either in the corporate world or outside of the corporate world, because I don't want to let go of my one-to-one coaching. I get immense satisfaction out of being able to have that personal level with people. But into whether it's a group environment in corporate or at the executive level, which I'm, pulling more of that together for myself, but in executive wellness. But absolutely, I think it has to be part of executive coaching.
Well, I think it's essential. What I want to really emphasize is that with the biologic balance, with the genetic testing from AGS, with the stress mastery assessments, more time really should be spent at the beginning to really kind of get the person online, connected to the change process, really get it, so that then you can move to the strategies and techniques that you want to employ to help that individual.
Right.
And I think we jump too quickly into, well, let's do meditation. Well, great, but let's think about what else we could do, because we have to change not just our physiology, but our mind and the way we think and how we perceive the world. So I see this as being really very important. And as if we bring Level Head on with the app, we now have another piece of ammunition,
another tool
we can take to a corporation or to an individual.
Again, thank you for participating in this webinar. If you would like to take advantage of the cortisol testing for yourself or one of your clients, please contact Kyla, kylalee.wl@gmail.com, or go to www.biologicalbalancesolution.com. Once again, remember that there's a $100 registration fee, which has been waived by Kyla. So again, please contact Kyla for more information about that. And don't forget, don't just manage stress, learn to master it.